Hey everyone, hello to the Emotional Entrepreneur Show. Welcome. We are so excited to be here with you talking about mentorship in the age of remote work and strategies for cross-generational collaboration. That was a lot. So,
yeah, our platform does not like those long titles.
No, they do not. Hey, Jen, quick question. Are you getting the feed? Because I'm not getting the feed on my phone. So
let me look.
Yeah.
Sometimes
it might come up eventually, but for some reason, it is not coming up now. So
on Instagram?
On Instagram.
Yeah.
Awesome. Okay, great. Yay, there we are. But for some reason, it is not coming up on mine. I don't know why.
Bibiana's here.
Hey, Bibiana. And then my friend Michelle was here, and she said hello. So hello. Oh my gosh. Okay, I'm still trying to look and work out these keys. I just don't know why this is happening. All right, let me make sure I'm getting on LinkedIn, and we are there. So welcome, everybody. I'm so excited to be here with you, with Jen, and talking about mentorship in the age of remote work, because today, mentorship can look a lot different in relation to what it looked like with us all going into the office versus those of us that either work remotely or in a hybrid situation. Now, some of the questions that have come up are, can you really make those great mentorship connections? Can you make those relationships work? And we're going to answer these questions and how to actually develop those relationships, how to support those remote work, cross-generational collaborations.
Your brain is still on Veterans Day.
I know. It's my tongue and it's my brain exactly today. So I know. I'm serious, Jen. There's something going on with my brain. And by the way, folks, so if my internet is a little splotchy, it's because yesterday it went down and I'm not getting my LinkedIn quite right yet either. So anywho, I think that it's really important because we have gone remote work in a lot of situations or hybrid to cover this subject because things look different. And it doesn't mean that these relationships can't work. It absolutely means they can, but there's different ways of approaching these relationships and different techniques in regards to how to really support them and become fluid in our communication, our connection, and how we're growing those relationships. Jen, thoughts?
Yeah, I think people are looking for, some support and answers of especially because we as we've talked about in the last few episodes, people are being asked to come back to the workplace.
Yeah.
So now there's another layer of something to deal with, right? It's just like, okay, we had this problem before COVID. Now we all left the building. Now some of us are, depending on the company you work with, are being asked to come back the whole time now. It's not just 3 days coming in. And I think that can be a lot, that's a lot of action. There's a lot of things going on and it could be confusing. And, I've talked to different people about this. Some of my cousins had to go back into the office full time. There was no more only 3 days out of the week. It was come back totally. Actually, one of my cousins works at Amazon. So so he was one of them.
Wow.
So it's
how was that for him? How was that going back into the office full time?
I had to talk to him. He was too busy acting silly during Halloween. He was the one that dressed up as Ray Gun.
Oh my God.
I didn't have a chance to ask him how it was, but then my other cousin, same thing, works for Yamaha,
Oh,
and
okay.
it's changing. So, the
Wow.
whole thing from going completely remote now, because they work for these, these Fortune 500 companies. So it's
Yeah.
like coming back into the office from going to, totally remote to, okay, a few days a week. Now it's like, hey, everybody come back. So,
Right. Yeah,
yeah,
absolutely.
it's kind of like, what? We just got used to being home and juggling this and having that flexibility. And so I think people are looking for some guidance. Well, like, I should even say, I'll even say this, well, what are my rights? Like, what am I able to
Oh,
do and say and get away with?
interesting.
You know what I'm saying? Because, in fact, there was an article. I totally forgot to find it. Now it's gone in the stacks of news, especially because it's before the election. And
Yeah.
there was an article that I saw that talked about this very subject. Well, like how do I go back? Like there was a lady that even said, I'm so frustrated. She was like, I feel like me having to come back in, it's like somebody making me sit down and do my homework. And I was
Oh, like you're
and I
being
was like, "Okay."
scolded.
I said, "Okay, I can see that." And then, of course, they had an attorney chime in about, like, "Yeah, you know what? The employer can't really ask the people to do this and that." And I was like, "What?" I didn't get into it because it was like I had to, like, get
Yeah.
to doing stuff, but I was like, "Okay, this is obviously something that people are dealing with," and trying to find out, like, "Well, do I have to do that? I mean, am I gonna lose my job if I don't decide to come in?" I mean, what are you getting fired for? For for doing the remote? I don't know.
Right.
So there's a lot of things that people are going through, and I think people are looking for some guidance on, like, well, how do I handle this? If I do have to come back, how do I handle that transition after how many years of doing the hybrid thing or being completely at home?
Yeah, absolutely. I love everything that you said there in regards to, people feeling like, do they have legal rights? Um, Feeling a bit scolded about what's happening, feeling like there's so much micromanagement in relation to, you don't trust me. Again, does that break down trust in that relationship between the company and the employees? Right.
Right.
So, this is so important that you mentioned so many things there, because we know by doing our research, and Jen and I and a team of people have been doing research on cross generational collaboration and mentorship. And we know that there's going to be a lot of bumps in the road in regards to people going back, people being asked to do hybrid work when they've done 100% remote work, when yeah, and just doing remote work and what that looks like in relation to mentorship, because a lot of times we perceive that mentorship has to be done solely in person, and that is not the case. But how do we really, in this age of remote work, how do we build up those relationships? Yes, we do know that when you're in person, there's a different type of connection, there's a different type of learning, but mentorship usually is done on a one-to-one basis. So how do you build up that communication and that virtual connection with somebody who is your mentor? And when we talk about mentor, just so that you know, we know that everybody can be a mentor, because that means an exchange of knowledge. Because what we're really doing here is, when we're talking about mentorship, and this is where we differ too in our, not just our practice protocol and our theoretical premise, but across the board, that everyone can be a mentor, and we need to value each other coming into the workforce. And the reason for that is because when people feel not valued, when they feel separated from the other folks that they work with, when they feel like they're in silos, just feeling maybe having some what's that word called, that you're not feeling that imposter syndrome, right? So, in having that imposter syndrome, how are they feeling connected? How are they feeling engaged? And how are they feeling valued? Right. And so, what I would encourage you to do, there are some really important steps here, is really have those regular check-ins, schedule regular check-ins, have apps where, like Jen and I, we may not see each other every single day. We have worked remotely from each other for years now. She lives on one coast, I live on the other, and we have regular check-ins, and we use WhatsApp. right? To do that. There are applications to keep connected, to share memes, to share information, to share, just your thoughts. Some ways that we could do better at connecting. We can use, even when you're working with somebody, think about those interactive tools that can really engage those mentors. Both of you can serve as mentors, so you can both think of what applications you can use to engage each other, such as chat platforms, whiteboards, polling. Polling's really great. It's a lot of fun. Who likes polling out there? I know I do. So there's a lot of different interactive tools. There's a lot of ways that you can informally check in with each other. So it doesn't have to be just those scheduled times where you're checking in. So these things that I've mentioned will help build those relationships, help build those connections, and build that authenticity between the relationship, and really break down those silos and build up trust as well. Jen?
Yeah, I'm gonna read what Bibiana said. Are you still not
Please.
able to access?
I am, but it's coming in very slowly
Oh,
because,
yeah, don't
said,
worry.
right, the social aspects are the hardest part.
Okay, you saw that. Okay, so she also said commanded, more like, yeah, I know, right, Bibiana? I'm wondering if they're like being demanded and commanded to come back into the workforce. And she
Right.
said, when I worked in an office, I had amazing outfits. Now my weekend wear is amazing. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then she said, right, the social aspects are the hardest part. Yeah, I mean, I'd be interested to see how people are navigating through having to come back after, and I'll be fair, I'm sure there's some people who like, oh, I'm so glad to come back. I'm sure there's people who feel that way too. They're happy to come
Yeah.
back. Yeah.
Absolutely. I think there's a lot of people who do like office work or being in the office. I know that one of my husband's friends actually, he had the option of going fully remote, and he was like, "No, I'm going to check the box for hybrid," because he was like, "I need to get away." Not that he doesn't love his children and love his wife, but he's like, "I need to be in a separate place from them for part of the day." Right?
Right.
And it's okay. We all have our own reasons or rationale for that, right? And yet, even let's say with my husband's office, there's nobody there. When they go in, there's no one there. They even changed the landscape of what the way the offices looked because there were so few people there in the office. So rather than each person having an office, they changed the whole space to be open and just have little dividers between desks.
Ew, I don't like that.
Well, and here's the
Yeah.
other thing. They had two spaces where if you need privacy, you could go into those spaces and use those spaces for some privacy.
I'd be in that
So,
space like the whole day till I left. I do not like people around me when I'm making calls, and I just don't like it. It's just weird to me. I can't stand it.
right? So it
Yeah.
was a really weird setup too.
Yeah, I
And
don't like that
here
open space setup. I need the door closed. I need to have, like, nobody watching me. Like, I need to just work in my cave and focus, like yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm going to read what Bibiana says. I was forced into remote way before COVID, and I didn't like it because I don't have a space for it. So it was awful and hard to be a mom and work. I like separation of work and home. So there's somebody Bibiana mentions, I like that separation between work and home. And I think a lot of moms like that too. During the evolution of motherhood too, because it was allowed them to have that adult interaction, that adult connection, which they needed to be separate from their kids and then go back home and do that routine at night and such, right?
Right.
So I know that a lot of people like that, but we were forced into a situation, right? So we're asking everybody to stay home, make sure you have a space to work at home. And so we ended up creating spaces for ourselves in our homes to be able to do remote work. And then we set up not just that, but we set up the other resources to align with that remote work, such as childcare, school care, work, remote school work, for our kids. Like all these different things change so dynamically that people then being asked to go back to work are like, well, now I've got to change this, and this. And we just got into a routine, right? Or we got into a routine after so many years. So I think it's not just the part of communication and collaboration. It's what's happening in society that's impacting our workforce. So, this is such an important discussion because what Jen and I and the team do, in relation to our cross generational mentorship, will help people go through those transitions of bringing people either back into the office or working with those hybrid situations, especially when it comes to leadership and mentorship practices.
Right.
So there's things that I've mentioned already, such as those virtual connections, and how do you stay connected? How do you build up trust? How do you build up transparency? How do you build authenticity within relationships regarding mentorship? I think one of the first ways to really start that is getting to know each other,
Mhm.
is asking questions where you might have similarities, where you might have differences, and where you can come together in your thought process in regards to your work strategies, your missions, your visions, and your values. So I think once you set the tone for that, you can do that not just, and that's why I say it's not just always in a formal way that you do that. It's also by using those informal check ins. So you can use something like WhatsApp to do informal things and say, hey, how's your day? Or hey, I'm checking back in with you to see what's going on. I know you mentioned this during one of our meetings, and either mentor can do that. So
Right.
you both can do that and take that initiative, right? The other ways are those interactive tools that I had mentioned. Bring in some things that, are fun, such as whiteboards, such as surveys, such as polls, such as chat platforms, and use those tools and see what best works for that collaboration. Then also the tech gaps. There are a lot of tech gaps across the generations, right? So what we want to do is we want to offer really easy guides to follow, maybe short tutorials. You do it, Jen. You do it often. You do it in our emails. And what do you use?
Oh, Loom and, Sunspark.
Exactly. Tell us more about that, because those are the things that also, when it comes to tutorials, people can use. And I think just mentioning these resources is really important, because I think a lot of people either don't know how to use them because it takes a little bit to understand how to use them. But the people that use Loom can actually go through a tutorial about how to use it, right? And also talk about how you use it.
Yeah. Well, Loom, if you're not familiar with it, it's like you can record the screen. You can have your face show up or not. And maybe it's just your screen.
Yes.
Depends what you're comfortable with. I will say that if you can show your face, it's just better. And that's also for Zoom. I will tell you, as a presenter, as somebody that's the host, is very difficult when your screen is off because it's hard for us to read the room or the
Yes.
virtual room. We can't see your face. I mean, I've done workshops where almost, I mean, but these were like college students. But when everybody's camera's off, I feel like I'm talking to no one. So it's. So here's my plug. Please turn your camera on if you can, because it helps the presenter, the host, connect with you online. Because we're not in front of you. And then but it also builds a connection. So if you're trying to, build, relationships or get to know the other person, it helps when there is a face. And that's why, even just as basic as social media or marketing, it's like people connect to posts where there's a face versus just,
Yes.
a quote, just a static photo of a random thing. Like there's a connection when there's a face. So but the video allows you to, walk through something. And to be honest, the reason why I do it is because I hate typing out long emails when it's trying to explain something. And if I can just do a video and show you exactly what I'm talking about, it saves me time. It makes more sense for the other person, because I cannot stand reading long emails that's trying to give me all the instructions. I rather just watch a quick video. Why do you think you all go to YouTube? Because it's just so much easier. You don't read the manuals because you go to YouTube, and that's exactly why I use these videos. Plus, every time I've used the video, and people have not seen that route or that method be used before, or they've never seen it, like I always, always, always will get like, "Oh my gosh, that was so cool. I've never seen this. I love it." And it's like instant rapport. Instant
Yeah.
rapport. And that's kind of how I landed the TEDx. I sent a Loom video to the organizer, and I even explained all these other things and built that connection. And she told me later on, she's like, "You know what? You stood out because you did that." And
Mm.
I've gotten projects and contracts because I would reach out back and I would just literally answer through a video. So Loom is one, but the other one that I use is SendSpark. And that one I use a lot to build connection, because there's nothing I'm explaining on the screen. This is not me sharing the screen. Although you could use it for that too. So they're two different platforms. They do the same thing. But I will primarily use SendSpark if I just want to say a video message and I'm just talking to you like this and I'm looking at the camera and I'm just like, oh my gosh, it's so great to meet you. Summer connected us and I just wanted to reach out and just set up a time to connect. It could be that simple. And I'm gonna tell you, like, people immediately will tell me, like, "Oh my gosh, I feel like I know you already." And it's just like, how much do you think you stand out doing that versus you just sent another cold email back? And I'm
Yeah.
telling you, this has helped me get business, close contracts because they already felt like they knew me. So that's how I've used it in the, I found it like a couple of maybe 3 years ago. Actually, like almost 4 years ago. Yeah, about 3.5 years. And, it's been a wonderful tool. Plus, again, like I said, I don't like writing long emails. It's
Yeah.
my problem is I make long videos, like, because 'cause I'm talking and talking. So, my problem is
And we
long
use
videos.
WhatsApp for, for our short little, conversations or our long little audios, so
Yes, that too. I know, I'm like that. I'm known as like, "Oh, no, she's gonna do." I know. Paul's like, is he he'll leave, like, a 12-minute WhatsApp message. He's like at the end, he's like, "I know you're gonna come back with something longer. It's not a competition." And I'm like, "I know it's not a competition. I just end up saying a lot of things." But it's just so funny. So, it's a tool. It's a tool, but I mean, those are ways I've used it, but imagine how you can use that for your teams and how you can build that connection with, if you're like a manager, if you're in charge of a team and you need to, and everybody's remote. I've done remote work for, I don't even know, 15 years. It's a bit
yeah.
like Zoom was not new to me during pandemic. And it's funny because people are like, how are you transitioning? I'm like, nothing has changed.
Yeah.
And, because these new tools came out, it was a even better way to stay connected to the team. And we were, many of us, and I've worked for different startups, many of us were in different states. But I felt connected. I did feel connected. We all had meetings. We also communicated through another tools called BombBomb.
Mhm.
Much more expensive. Go to SendSpark if budgeting is an issue. But it does the same thing where you can do video messages and immediately connect. But it was such a great tool for me to learn, and it's weird at first because you're just talking to the computer, and then but when you attach it to the email, I'm telling you, you try it. It's kind of fun to see people's reactions and like, oh my gosh, that was so cool. Like, I mean, how often do you get a video message?
Right.
You
Yeah, right.
don't. You don't.
Yeah.
You'll stand out, especially if you wanna stand out and it's something that there's, like, high competition. You're trying to go after a contract or a project. I'm like, Do that.
Yeah.
Do that. I'm telling you, you will not be forgotten. You're going to, like, rise to the top, and they're going to consider you over people because you stood out just because you did a video message. But,
Absolutely.
yeah, going to the question that we're talking about, it's, finding using these tools to connect with your team, because it's not enough to just send emails, and trust me, nobody wants to read another email. Nobody
Yeah.
wants to or nobody wants to sit into another meeting that could have been handled in a video, I mean,
Yeah.
I do that all the time with all the people I work remotely with. I do work for different companies. I will literally just send a video message, and I can tell when they saw it, and then they just write back like, "Okay, cool, this was good, this was helpful." I mean, we didn't have to set up another Zoom. It's like, I did a video for 5 minutes, we feel connected, we're on the same page. And it's so funny because on Loom, it'll say things like, "You just saved each other another, having to do another meeting."
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
I'm just like, I totally agree because I am not one to do meetings just to do meetings. So, yeah.
Yeah, and I don't blame you. People are over meetings. They really, really are over meetings. And I think it's causing, this fatigue, this meeting fatigue for a lot of people, meeting after meeting after meeting. I want to read some of these comments because long lens for you to view too is Michelle, and she writes, so many friends who own businesses said that it became much more productive to bottom line when employees worked remotely. Very interesting byproduct
Mm,
of COVID. And then Bibiana says the biggest benefit to working from home was when my child was sick, I could be there and not miss work. It was a huge juggle to do it all. And then Michelle says, Bibiana, I commend you, Superwoman, to juggle that all. And then Bibiana says, thank you. Those were wild times for sure. But Michelle says that's a great methodology. And I think that, yes, many men and women had to do that. They had to juggle to create those methods or the processes that would work for them working remotely. And then they got used to it. It became something that was part of their lives. And so to transition back into a hybrid or an in-person, everyday in-person work situation became difficult. So some of the things that, when we're talking about mentorship in the age of remote work, it can be done. But we've mentioned some of the things that will help bridge those gaps, to encourage informal check-ins, to have timelines and actual goals set for each other. Both of you, again, are interactive mentoring each other. Again, I want to mention something too about the tech. So we mentioned a lot of things regarding tech, from WhatsApp to Loom to SunSpark to Bonbon to a lot of different things that you can use in regards to your resources. Even WhatsApp, I'm still learning certain things that you can do there in relation to, oh my gosh, I have a person that is in another country. And usually what I do is 20-minute introduction calls before I schedule somebody for my podcast. I want to make sure that I get to know them, vet them a little bit, and then just have that conversation to really understand where they're coming from in relation to A, B, or C. And so what I've learned is I don't like setting up Zoom meetings all the time. I'm worn out by them. So I just like these short phone calls, like just give me a short phone call. Let me know who you are. I just want to get to know you. And with people who are in another country, I use WhatsApp to do those phone calls. And so it doesn't cost anything. It's really easy. Get this, you can create your own WhatsApp number, so you don't even need to use your own personal number. So there's a lot of different ways where we can become more tech savvy or tech aware, right? And I think that sometimes when we do this, it makes for efficiency. It lends to efficiency, but it also sometimes can be overwhelming for people who don't know the tech or who are scared or discouraged by tech. And that's where things like Loom or SunSpark, where you're taking people through a tutorial, it makes it so much easier. So I like that you use that, Jen. Jen has taken me through many tutorials, and I'm like, here we go. Jen's going to take me through a tutorial.
You know what? She never asks questions because I'm so freaking thorough.
She is so thorough.
No questions. She got it first shot.
So thorough, right? And I need that sometimes because it allows me to keep it too. So if I need to go back to it and go, oh, okay, I can do this, or I can read what she was saying as well. So because we have different kinds of learners out there, right? We have auditory, visual, we have just so many different types of learners that it makes it really, really nice to be able to have these different applications to learn together. The other thing what Jen said is show your face. Show your face. That creates a connection. It's such a pretty face too, Jen. And so when I do my podcast, I actually just do it audio only. What did you do?
We've talked about this. People, continue.
Yeah, right. And so I do it audio only. You'll only get an audio version of it, but you can still see it on YouTube because it translates it into like a video format. However, when we are recording, we actually record on Zoom so we can see each other's faces because we need to see the cues that it makes it easier to understand. So we're not talking over each other, that we see the cues, we understand the emotion behind what we're saying. So we get and draw from that emotion, right? So it's important when you are mentoring, you use some applications where you're actually seeing each other, that it's not just audio, right? That you're actually connecting, because I think you can then see the cues. And when you see those cues, what I want you to do, here's a tip. I do not want you to make assumptions about what you're seeing or what you're thinking. I want you to ask. I want you to ask how that person felt about that statement, or how that person feels about maybe the goals or milestones you're setting together, because you might get like, a look like that, but you don't know if it's because of their time, if it was because it doesn't align with their values, or if it doesn't align with their vision of what you're doing together. Ask. Just ask the questions, break down the information so that you can build up the communication. And sometimes people are really scared when they don't know each other. So get to know each other, not just in a formal way, but in an informal way as well. Create those create those opportunities for each other to use the applications, the technology to break down. I'm going to read some of these comments to break down maybe the assumptions that are being made. Because I think a lot of times when we do use things that can see each other's face, it definitely helps. Jen, why are you laughing? Because of the comments
Yes,
here?
yeah, the comments, because maybe okay, let's go to
Read
the
them,
comments.
read them.
So Viviana first said, "Oh, come on, I love email threads. They are everything, girl. I don't even like group chat, okay?"
Oh,
Um,
oh, me
so
either at
so
all.
that some so she said, "Summer, I so agree, much more efficient." Dre's here. He said, "Good morning, loving the
Hey.
spectacles." And then I wrote to Viviana, "I'm sure you love the person who hits reply all." That there's always that person right in the email thread. It's like, dude, I did not need to see all this. Like, why didn't you just hit reply, not reply all?
Yeah.
And then Viviana said, "That person gets coal for Christmas and an explainer video." Yes, you're gonna get a 30-minute Loom video from me of
Oh my
why not
gosh.
to do that.
Oh,
And
and by
then
the way, let me jump in here because even if you do get a 30-minute Loom video or you get a 20-minute WhatsApp, you can put that on double time so you can go through that a lot more quickly, right? And
yes,
so even when I get longer WhatsApps, Jen and I are very familiar with each other and we are okay with like double timing what we're hearing because we're so used to it. And when people hear me listening to something in double time, they're like, what is happening over there? I am almost in a panic listening to what you're listening to. And I'm like,
yes,
oh
yeah.
no, this is normal. If I put this on normal speed now, it's like, wow.
It's gonna be all day.
Wow.
We're gonna be doing this all day. Yeah,
Right.
like I
And
listened to
go ahead,
I was gonna
Jen.
say, I listened to a YouTube video at 1.75 or 2x.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I do too. And sometimes I will stop it and go back and go, oh, I need to catch that direction that they're giving in the YouTube
Right.
video, which is totally okay. And then you can go out to the comments as well and look at if it's posted there. But I want to read this from Michelle. She says, isn't that funny? I have a 50-year variance on my team and have to be patient with the team members who lack tech savvy just to try to keep a sunny disposition.
Mm,
Okay, I love what you've mentioned here, Michelle. What you mentioned here is something that we actually take companies through. Do you realize that there are 5, almost 6 generations right now out there working from traditionalists all the way to Gen Z? We can break that down even further, but let's not get into the weeds with that, right? But we also have Gen Alpha that's soon approaching and coming into the workforce. So we're looking at these cross generations or generations really not understanding each other sometimes. So that can be really challenging. And so it can be challenging with tech. It can be challenging with communication and how we communicate, how we work together, what that looks like, what our goals are, what our values are. And that's why I say earlier, what I mentioned earlier, don't make assumptions because as we work with companies to break down these barriers and build bridges, we are making sure that we are not making those assumptions. We're teaching different ways of really challenging those assumptions and pushing back on those assumptions that are being made because we could be creating things in our own mind that maybe aren't necessarily true. And if they are true, maybe people just need support in regards to really facing some of the barriers that they're facing because they're feeling a little bit discouraged because they don't know how to ask, right? Or they're feeling siloed. And so that's why I think, we learn so much from each other. And I love all these comments that are being made here because they really do bring out some of the things that we as a company, as a program that we are going to be launching next week. We're so excited about this that we're talking about these different things that are really going to help support companies, especially when you're out there working with so many different generations and age groups. Jen?
right. No, it's great. I love all the comments. Yeah, it's really interesting to see everybody's experience is obviously very different. And I think as a manager or somebody in charge, director, or whatever it is, to be aware of, your people are in different generations, and your people are they all have different expectations, and also to balance that with what they are dealing with at home. I'm even thinking about how, like, Bibiana wanted that, there was an advantage to staying home. And then there's some people that, oh, I want to go back into the office. I even think about people who don't have the luxury of creating a separate office. They just don't have the space. They live in a small house. There's like there's even, especially in, some families, they have multi generations living in the same house. And, I remember tutoring years and years ago, and it was like, aunts and uncles, grandparents in the house, and the kids didn't even have a separate, their own
Yes.
space, their own room, and they didn't even have a desk. And we would be doing the work on the dining table or like on the living room, like coffee table. It was just like, and that wouldn't be any different than, all of a sudden people had to work at home. It's just like, I'm in the kitchen. Like, I don't have
Yeah.
an extra office. Just, I can set up. So it affected everybody so differently. But so whatever it is, I think it's also important, if you are remote as a manager, somebody leading teams, is especially when you have a new person, and even if you haven't done this with an existing team, one of the things that I have done, because I have worked remote for so long, whenever there was a new person that came on board, or when I was the new person, I was proactive in, like, setting up time with every single person. Like, hey, I just wanted to do like a quick 30-minute get to know you. And that
Yeah.
made it easier, because I wanted to find out what that person is all about. What do they like? How long they've been here? How they find this company? What do you like doing? And then they also found out about me, because it's always cool to build that connection, to find out what do we have in common. And so, it's all about building that rapport and having that understanding. And then again, like you've heard Summer and I talk about this. So whenever we did have conferences, whenever we did have in-person gatherings, it wasn't like I was meeting these people for the first time in person, but it's like we already knew each other, because we
Yeah.
took the time to get to know each other. So if you haven't done that with your team, that's something that would be really important. Like, get to know them. You might find out that they have a sick family member, that's they're dealing with something. They're taking care of that at home. So you have some compassion and understanding where they're coming from. Or maybe maybe they have, struggling with something that's happening with their kid. Or maybe you find out, hey, they're like in a motorcycle club. I mean, you just never know what you're going
Right.
to find out about people. And if you want to if you want to build relationships with people, you have to take the time to find out more about them. And as somebody that leads teams, that's so critical, to take the time to get to know your people. You never want to be that boss that and it's unfortunate that there's so many out there. You never want to be that boss. Well, I don't think I know I wouldn't, where everybody doesn't like you. They're like, they don't want to, they don't there's a disdain, and there's like, oh no, here they come, because there's no relationship. There's no, they feel like you don't care. You're not vested in who they are, and the value that they bring to the team. And so if there's kind of any kind of, like, animosity, or if I would also say, step back and pay attention, because I think there's also some people who are either don't care or aren't aware that, hey, your team probably doesn't like you. As a let's be real. All of us who have a job, or who have worked at a job, there's always those experiences we had where we didn't like the boss for whatever reason. And a lot of times it was like, there was something that they weren't paying attention to, or they weren't aware of what the team was going through, or the team didn't feel supported, and they just like kind of floated in, walked out, and barked orders. And it's like, that is not the way to build rapport. That is not the way to build a relationship and trust. So, and then if you are, and then to make it worse, if you're remote, I mean, you're definitely not building relationships. So those are so many things to consider if you are leading teams. Like, how are you investing in your people? And if you aren't in person, like, you have to take the extra step to really build that, because you're online.
Absolutely. I love that, Jen. It's about connection. It's about people first. It's about understanding each other. It's about doing those scans of your workforce, of your unit, of your people, in relation to really getting doing an intake about who you're working with. And I don't mean that needs to be formalized all the time, but it can be, to see where they're coming from and see what's working right now and what may not be working. And also how you're trying to make those personal connections makes such a difference. It's such a human space, right? And it really is about people first, and then it's about how are we creating that construct to bring people together to understand one another and work with each other for, for the harmony of this company, of this unit, of this group, right? And so one of the things I do want to read here, Michelle says, "Oh, congrats, new company." Michelle, it's a new program under Core Women. So go check it out at corewomen.com. There's a tab called Core Mentorship Solutions. And you can see the team below. We have one person not there listed, but we had a team meeting. And there's something I want to mention about team meetings too, is we had a 2 hour, hour and a half team meeting yesterday. And it was just so great to understand and connect and to see people and to hear where they're coming from, what they value, what skill sets they have, and to be able to share that in a nurturing way where we're embracing each person's ideas. And I think that it makes the team so much richer, right? And we're not pushing back. And I'm just tearing up going like, oh my God, this team is so amazing, right? And so, when you look at some of these things, and we'll get to, because we went way over today, but this is such an important topic, but I will mention my nugget shortly. But what's your nugget, Jen? Because we really need to wrap this up.
Yeah, I would just say like what I just said at the last part about if you haven't taken the time to get to know the people in your team, even if it's getting coffee, even if it's just like, and if it's remote, maybe just hey, I just wanted to do a we never really got to know each other. I wanted to find out more than just what you do here. Can we do like a 20-minute like coffee chat?
Yeah.
Just a reach out and just find out, you never know what you're gonna find out. And I think when we break that barrier, you just like that person more most of the time. You end up liking that person more, like, oh my God, I didn't know we had all this in common all this time. I mean, it just ends up being more pleasant. And then you have more of a vested interest in to support each other. And then the last thing I was gonna add too is like, we're talking about mentorship in the age of remote work. If you expect to mentor somebody or especially on your team, if you want people to follow you and you want to mentor them, you have got to build rapport and relationship with your people
Yeah,
first. Nobody's going to want to listen to you they don't like you. They don't want you to mentor them. So to take that
exactly.
into consideration, that is my nugget.
And I love that, Jen, that you said that, because, and I want to put a caveat onto that too, because as we talk about this new idea of mentorship, this building this culture of mentorship in a new way, and we're doing cross-generational mentorship, which means all people can be a mentor. We're taking out the word mentee, right? You have to look at yourself and say, am I ready? Can I build relationships? Can I build, those connections? In which way can I come to that mentorship relationship ready to build the relationship, ready to build the connection? And here's my nugget for the day is I would encourage building through stories, building through real things in your life, showing transparency and vulnerability. The reason I say that is because we are not perfect as humans. And guess what? People want to hear about things that aren't working for us or things that we had challenges with so that they can also learn. We have all had challenges. As Jen had mentioned, maybe there wasn't a boss we really appreciated because of the way they worked or managed or whatever the case may be. We want to hear those challenges, about those challenges. We want to share in those challenges because we've all had them, or that uncertainty or that vulnerability. Be vulnerable, be transparent, because that's going to really help build those relationships, especially as we work across, remotely and generationally. Anything else, Jen?
No, just wait. The comments. There was one
So
more.
Viviana says one-on-one feels connective. The weirdness of hi, I like ice cream and fuzzy slippers in a group is so ick.
You stay remote then.
Oh, Viviana, we can count on you. I just say some Great things, but in a unique way. So I love it. So are you ready to close this out?
Yep, let's
All right,
go.
let's
Y'all
we
get to
dance it in.
go back to your lives.
Yes, absolutely. Okay, here we go. And join us next week as we go through embracing vulnerability, how transparency drives entrepreneurial success. So that'll be our topic for next week. All right, everybody, let's dance this out. Have a great afternoon. Have a great week. Take care. Woo!
Thank you for being here.
Thank you, everybody, for joining us today. Mwah. Mwah, mwah, mwah.